Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk a little bit about SUI because we've seen a pretty strong pump within the market overall within crypto. Haven't really seen too much or maybe as much as we've come to expect on SUI. Again, kind of context is everything. SUI typically has been the one kind of leading the market up. And so now that we haven't been seeing that at least too much over the past probably several weeks, I know that there are some people starting to maybe wonder a little bit about SUI. I think we still got a ton of super bullish things coming in for SUI. So I want to talk a little bit about that today, just because what we're seeing on the chart right now is looking pretty impressive. And so I think that's why we might have seen such like sticky price movement recently, not really too volatile one direction or the other, is because when we look at the chart, I think it'll make a lot more sense. But right now we are going to jump into crypto bubbles just to get an overall sense of kind of what the market's looking like today. We can see some pretty big winners on the day, HBAR, Litecoin, XDC kind of being the big ones. Obviously XRP getting very, very close to new all-time highs. So we are seeing some pretty crazy moves out of XRP as well. We do have a couple of different meme coins running today as well, Fartcoin kind of being the biggest one. Virtuals and AI16Z pulling back a little bit, so maybe we're seeing a little bit of the run subsiding out of AI, and then obviously we can see SUI up 5% just today as well. So things looking pretty good. The week has turned back to green as well. We can see some pretty green bounces here. Again, this is a pretty strong move to the upside from what we were seeing out of like a pretty nice pull to the downside. Obviously we're kind of seeing the results of that resulting bounce here. Now looking at the SUI chart, this is what I wanted to show you guys. What we are seeing is a fib retracement tool, and so to explain to those of you who don't necessarily really know what a fib retracement tool does or kind of what its purpose is basically what it does is there's essentially this concept called Fibonacci. It's essentially these numbers that just kind of tend to happen everywhere, all throughout nature and various different things. So essentially there's this kind of concept that like people are just drawn to Fibonacci numbers somewhat subconsciously. Is not really like something that people really are consciously aware of, but I wanted to show it to you because Fibonacci's, as you can see, are pretty like, there's a little, maybe a little bit of like some confirmation bias going on here now at this point, but like we can see that the Fibonacci numbers are actually like pretty interesting. So basically what you do is you take the top, the recent top to the recent bottom, as we can see here, and then we can see at various points like these Fibonacci like support and resistance lines kind of do act exactly as that. Obviously we can see this one acting a little bit as a support, little bit of resistance here at this point. You can see a little bit of support here at this one, and then obviously as we go up we can see decent bit of support here at the 1618. When we did see SUI make that pullback, we saw it not obviously stop exactly on the 1618, but we can see that there was a lot of liquidity at this 1618 range. And now what we can see right now is the 2618 range is also right next to that $5 mark. So we're also seeing the 2618 on the fib, as well as kind of that psychological barrier of the $5. If we look at what we're seeing kind of up close just in the past couple of days, we can see nothing really too special happening with RSI, nothing really too special happening with Bollinger Bands. So not anything too much to be concerned about there. We'll actually just go ahead and turn off Bollinger Bands so it's easier to look. But yeah, nothing too crazy happening there. What we can see though is we have bounced off this trend line. Again, we are holding this trend line pretty solidly. This has been going ever since the end of November, so we are getting to the point where this is like a pretty high conviction like type of metric here that we are looking at. So we can see we did see this bounce off of the trend line. We are also back into the zone of liquidity here. Again, this zone of liquidity kind of being the period right before $5. You can see before we've been rejected off of this zone multiple times. We've had a little bit of support in this zone as well. So that's kind of one of the things we are seeing. Again, we're coming right back up into this $5 range. We did break above $5 once, again, could not hold it. Broke above again a second time, could not hold it. And so now, maybe this is the chance that we break above a third time and hopefully we hold it. But what we can see is obviously this has been a very pesky level of resistance to break. I do think once we break it, we'll probably see SUI just rocket up massively, just because this has been a massive point of resistance, which means we're getting a lot of the sellers out and we're getting new buyers in. And so when we have new buyers coming in, obviously their cost basis goes up. They're obviously not going to be wanting to be selling at $5, and so the less sellers that we get and the more buyers that we have, price continues to go up. And then maybe we find at this like 3618 range, we find it's about $6.70. Maybe we run into another level of resistance there. Hard to say exactly where we go for sure, but I do think just given the level of resistance that we have seen from this $5 range, once we break it, things will go flying pretty nicely, which is really good to see. Also, as we can kind of see here, I'll actually use a horizontal line just kind of as a different color scheme here, but we can see if we are to kind of respect this $5 range as a level of resistance, which I think is pretty fair to say given what we've seen, obviously we've seen a couple breaks here and there, but this does kind of look like a wedge that we are seeing. And so we're getting definitely to the very tip of this wedge, and we're also in this liquidity zone. So I do think this is looking like an opportunity where we could see a pretty ridiculous move to the upside, especially given that SUI's been somewhat quiet, I would say, over the past couple months. Obviously, this is an uptrend looking really, really nice, but we haven't seen some of the explosive gains that we saw here, where we went from like $1.80 to like almost $4 in the span of like a week or two, right? That we haven't really seen that recently. It's just kind of been a slow but consistent climb to the upside. And so overall, I think that's kind of what we're waiting for on a longer term here. Respect this level, like this trend line, and then hopefully break through this point of resistance that obviously has proved to be quite difficult basically ever since the middle of December. So if we can break through that, then I think we could see it fly. Now, if you are interested in trading SUI or Bitcoin, Ethereum, anything like that for that matter, feel free to use my link in the description below. I do have that link to BTCC. They are offering that 10% bonus on first time deposits. So it's a really, really good deal if that is something you are interested in. This is in addition to the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user. So BTCC throwing a whole bunch of money at you to come on over and trade with them. Again, if you are interested, they've been around for 13 years, so definitely not like a here today, gone tomorrow type of exchange. Also 300 plus crypto futures. If you have anything that you're wanting to trade, they probably have it. Again, also 500x leverage. I would strongly discourage you from using this level of leverage just because it can be very, very risky, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And frankly, even if you do it, it's kind of a little bit like gambling. If you want to treat it like that, that's great, but I would not treat it like investing using this type of leverage. But they do have lower amounts of leverage, and you can also trade spot too if you just want to stay completely away from leverage. Also, no VPN or KYC necessary. So if that's something that's important to you, then they obviously have that available as well. Now, moving on, I want to just do a super quick look at where we're looking at on SUI on the DeFi Llama, seeing what TVL is looking like, stablecoins. Those have been kind of the two that we've been looking at. We have seen TVL kind of stall out a little bit. We'll get rid of stablecoins so we can just see TVL. Stalling out a little bit here. If we go and look at stablecoins, similarly, we can see growth, not as explosive or like only up and to the right, but we are seeing a pretty consistent and strong growth. Basically, ever since like the end of October, we've kind of been, I would say, net neutral overall. But recently, I would say from like the middle of December onward, we have seen a pretty nice and consistent climb to the upside with stablecoins on chain, which is good to see. We can also see as well volume looking pretty good. We're holding volume quite well. Always good to see, of course. App revenue, again, very, very low, only about $100,000, which absolutely minuscule. But again, if you look at the trend is moving in the right direction. This is something that I would say is somewhat expected, just given kind of the age of the chain. There's not really a whole lot built on it. This is something, again, I kind of come back to this comparison fairly frequently, but this is what I would say is very close and considerable to Solana in the last bull run, because Solana frankly did not have a whole lot going for it. There really wasn't much to do on Solana. It was frankly kind of vaporware at that point in time, but we did see it run to like an $80 billion market cap. And so, I think SUI can do something similar, even though it doesn't necessarily have a whole lot going on chain. Now, that's not to say they don't have anything going on. Obviously, they've got Deepbook and Cetus and SUI Land and a lot of these different types of things. So there are things to do on SUI for sure. Just not maybe to the level of what the value might currently indicate. But again, that doesn't really matter, right? We're in a bull run. People are speculating. It's all about, what it could be, not necessarily what it is. And so we can see a lot of that here on the SUI chart, obviously. If we look at CoinGecko, very consistent move to the upside. However, what I did want to show looking at CoinGecko is a couple different things. We can see the fully diluted valuation of $50 billion. I wouldn't say that's a super unreasonable number, at least at this point in time. We can see the circulating supply only 30%. In my opinion, that's part of why we've been able to see such a consistent and like strong chart. It's been, very much on like a consistent move to the upside after we saw some of the struggling here. Look at that. I mean, that's a really, really nice looking chart. And so I think part of the reason for that is just because there's such a low float. It's a lot easier to control the price just because there's not as much in circulation. We can see though, there's going to be a ton of dilution coming into the market. So this again is something that I always say about SUI. We have to be very, very careful with SUI, making sure that we don't miss the top and head into a bear market, because things could get really, really bleak for SUI before it potentially finds a way up on the other end of it. Because again, look at what Solana did. It went from like $260 to like $8, and now it's back. But between now and then, it got pretty bad, right? And so I do think it's possible that we see something similar with SUI, which is why I want to point out the circulating supply and the variation between the current market cap and the fully diluted market cap. However, that is to say that I did look at Google Trends. We can see Sui has been trending very, very well. Obviously, when Sui started its run up, the Google search trends obviously went up with it. We've seen it come down a little bit since then. I think this makes sense. Other than maybe like XRP, I would say probably all of the alts within crypto have come down a little bit in terms of interest. XRP obviously still doing very, very well, but most of the other alts have kind of subsided a little bit. So the fact that we're still holding pretty decent in terms of search volume, I think really, really good to see. This is very encouraging for the Sui project overall. Again, looking at DeFi Llama and what the chart's looking like and what the search terms, like all of this type of stuff is showing that Sui's looking like a pretty strong and stable project. I think we have a pretty good chance of kind of continuing the uptrend, potentially even kind of decoupling from that trend line that we have been seeing and starting another, maybe not necessarily parabolic, but much, much more aggressive move to the upside like we saw, several months back. So I do think that's highly possible. If we do actually go back to the CoinGecko chart, what we can see here, $14 billion market cap. We're seeing XRP make new highs that I think is really encouraging for a lot of the crypto ecosystem. It's sitting at about 140 billion. We've seen Solana cap over 100 billion. We've seen BNB cap over 100 billion. So there's a lot more crypto projects going even higher than kind of what we've seen before. We haven't really seen Ethereum make its move yet, but it's possible we see Ethereum hit $1 trillion. With a lot of this, I do think this opens up the possibility that we see maybe BNB hit 200 billion and Solana hit 300 billion and maybe XRP hits 500 billion. Who's to say for certain? But if we did see something like that happen, I think it's very realistic that we could see Sui maybe even hit like 150 billion, and that would be another 10x from here, which would be crazy. That would put us to a $50 market cap, or $50 per coin, on Sui, which I think would be kind of nuts. I do think a lot would have to go right for that. Not necessarily anything to do with Sui per se. I think Sui is actually positioned very nicely to have that actually happen. What I'm talking about is more macro, right? I think we need to see the bull market, kind of like the bull market that we all want to see, and maybe some of us might be expecting. Again, don't expect anything in crypto, but potentially, some of us might be expecting that. Seeing that type of bull market come back is basically a prerequisite. I think we're going to need to see a lot of kind of tailwinds economically, both from like interest rates coming down, job data, potentially getting worse to allow interest rates to come down, but also still a healthy economy. Like we can't see any sort of crash because that's obviously going to crash crypto. We need to essentially see a really, really strong stock market, really, really strong, bond market, economy overall, but like weak enough that they want to continue to cut rates and do quantitative easing and a lot of stuff like that. It's one of those like kind of catch-22s where it's like gotta be bad but not super bad, but it's also still got to be like bad but still really good. Kind of a weird mix there, but that's kind of what we need to be expecting, I think, for us to see a run like that out of Sui. I do think it's totally possible, but again, who knows what 2025 is going to hold. I'm fundamentally still very, very bullish. I think we could see potentially another leg up kicking off after the inauguration here in the US. That happens on Monday. So, potentially an option there. Hard to say for certain, but hopefully you found the information in this video useful. Just talking about Sui, what we could be seeing, what we're seeing now, potential future prospects, a lot of that type of stuff for Sui. If you did find it useful, please do give me a like and a subscribe because it really, really does help me out. I really appreciate all you guys' interactions and seeing my channel continue to grow and seeing more people, commenting regularly and watching my videos. It's really nice to see. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, whatever, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section. I really do appreciate reading all your guys' comments and thoughts and whatnot, and I do try to read and respond to all of them. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.